Okay, so this is the first meme. And the Lorax, I guess is the name of that creature, says, to be clear about what's happening with Dr. Seuss's books, the people who decided to stop publishing some of them are the owners of the books who are choosing to make what they believe is an ethical choice with their own property after profiting on their intellectual property for nearly 8 decades. If this is somehow cancel culture gone mad, it's like saying that if you independently decide it's time to take your old car off the road, that it somehow really means that some nebulous they on the left are unfairly canceling you, and that's just knucking futz. Okay. So my answer to that was a very reasonable yes and no. While it's true that the decision not to publish 6 of his books is an internal one, we cannot be so naive as to believe that it's just coincidental timing, in that it is transpiring during the apex of this ludicrous cancel culture fervor spawned by hypersensitive morons. And then my childhood friend said, yes, maybe in the current situation the country's in, they feel the book shouldn't be published at this time. So I agree it is a yes and no thing, but the outrage really could be directed at better things. I wrote, here's the thing though, prior to this decision, had you ever heard of anyone bemoaning these allegedly racist themes or images in any of the works by Dr. Seuss? I sure as hell hadn't. So then this person writes, so what you're saying is people shouldn't act on their own opinions, and no one should listen to their customers because opinions don't matter, yet you share yours. Odd. I guess we're done worrying about people being mistreated or belittled. And I wrote, I never said that they don't have the right to cease publication of the works that they own. Of course they have that right. With that said, I am not thrilled with their decision, even though I acknowledge that they have every right to make said decision. The reason I'm not thrilled with the decision is because it lends credibility to this cancel culture nonsense that has clearly gone way too far. I said, I'll give you another example. You remember the whole Colorado Baker lawsuit. Although I vehemently disagree with the Baker's decision and ridicule his reasons, intentionally put in quotes, for making said decision, I acknowledge the autonomy that he, as a business owner, should have in accepting or rejecting customized work. In short, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do something. Then this other person chimes in and says 2 words, Mein Kampf. The difference is, one was a literal autobiography, a predicate of things to come. The others are children's books that can impact young minds into perceiving others as less than, possibly leading them down the path of supremacy. I believe Seuss Enterprises is looking for inclusion and sensitivity, hence their decision. And I wrote to her, you have got to be kidding. You are actually going to compare the works of Dr. Seuss to that of Adolf Hitler? Ironically enough, it's just that kind of ludicrous false equivalency that turns people against these causes. Besides, whether or not I think their decision is a good one or not, Besides, whether or not I think their decision is a good one is not really relevant to the original point that I was making. The post suggests that this decision was purely an internal one, free from any and all outside influences, and I simply do not agree with that. Yes, you can argue that they autonomously made the decision, but to suggest that it isn't highly influenced by this fervor is absurd. Of course it is. And then she writes, dude, chill. I was not comparing. I was elucidating a point, one that you so eloquently dismissed by not seeing the overall message. Have a wonderful day. And then this guy chimes in. What you're really saying is, yes, okay, there's the truth, but there's clearly a conspiracy here somewhere. Bullshit. This outrage is manufactured from the right to distract the moronic base from the fact that every Republican senator just voted to deny COVID relief to their constituents. Be careful you don't fall for it. I'll get to this condescending prick in a minute. And then this girl puts this Judge Judy meme. Ugh, shut up. So then I write to this guy and I said, I will thank you in advance not to put words in my mouth in the future. No, that is not remotely what I just said. I laugh at conspiracy theorists. I'm an articulate human being. I don't need you to tell me what I'm really saying. You can save that smarmy condescension for people who are actually less intelligent than you are. Yours was a misguided mission in this instance. So now that we have your particular nonsense dispelled with, what I am saying is that there is a general climate currently of political correctness on steroids, and it certainly must have contributed to the Dr. Seuss publishers' collective decision. The funny thing is, I haven't expressed outrage about this. I find it mildly concerning and perhaps even slightly disconcerting, but I am not outraged about this the way I have been about other even more insane cancellations and decisions in this realm. And then I write back to that girl, you were doing what to a point? Thing is, she wrote the wrong word. In fact, she wrote a non-word. Elucidating is not a word. She meant to say elucidating with a D. And then this guy writes, he quotes me, but he takes it out of context. He writes, we cannot be so naive as to believe it's just coincidental. And he stops there. You may wish you said something else, but your comment is what it is. You take a situation that has been fully explained and which you actually have no real knowledge and inject an opinion based on presupposition, conspiracy theorist. And he adds a smiling emoji as if to make it okay that he's calling me a fucking conspiracy theorist, which I'm obviously not. So I write back to him, you conveniently left off the word timing, which immediately followed coincidental. Taken in that context, I was not definitively implying some kind of conspiracy, and if you inferred as much, then that's your misinterpretation. I can't believe I need to reiterate this. I was merely stating that we currently find ourselves besieged by an over-aggressive form of political correctness, and it stands to reason that they may have felt some form of societal pressure as a result. And then she chimes in, buddy, I do not have a beef with you at all. I was making my point, but then you tried to cancel me by mansplaining. Ugh. Gee whiz, have a beer, coffee, tea, or whatever makes you happy. I wish you nothing but good tidings. Now please leave me out of further discussions, or in your case, argumentative behavior to exalt your point. Well done, point and match. She says, leave me out of further discussions. Bitch, you're the one who insinuated yourself into my comment. So I write back to her, oh great, your invoking of the term mansplaining makes you lose all credibility. In case you didn't realize, I was lightly poking fun of the fact that you did not spell elucidating correctly. You should also know that overall is one word in the context you used. And that was the end of that thread. Neither one of them wrote back to me, probably because they realized my points were valid. Now I'm going to move on to the other thing. Okay, so I didn't realize this was a different meme. And this meme is this. Just my opinion, I think they should deal with rap lyrics before they attack Dr. Seuss. Okay, fair point. Now, this girl wrote on this meme, and again, I didn't realize it at the time. I was still caught up in the fact that I was responding to those other people. So she wrote they weren't attacked. And she's right. And I wrote, that is true, and you can argue that to a certain extent. They autonomously made this decision, but it would be naive to dismiss the fact that they probably felt pressured by this preposterously aggressive cancel culture fervor that we currently find ourselves in. And she writes, perhaps, but there's no legitimate indication of that. And I write, of course there is. Consider the timing. These books have been out not just for years, but for multiple decades. And now all of a sudden, with everyone canceling everything, now it's time that they're going to do it. It's obvious that there's a cause and effect there. And she wrote, or people are simply becoming more aware of questionable decisions of the past. And I wrote, sometimes situations come along in life for which absolute concrete proof may not exist, and yet you still know it to be true. For me, this is definitely one of those. Do you know you are going to be alive tomorrow? Of course not, but I'm guessing that you are extremely certain that you will be. And she writes, you're speculating, pure and simple. That's fine, but it's certainly not a leg on which to stand. And I wrote, I'm doing a little more than speculating. I'd say it's an extremely likely probability. This isn't just one of 6 or 7 equally likely possibilities. This is the one that has much greater than 90% likelihood of being true. And she writes, according to you. And I write, according to logic. As I said, they had decades to right this wrong if we even accept the premise that it's a wrong that needed correcting. But they are doing it now right in the midst of this madness. And you think that has absolutely nothing to do with their decision? How can you even say that with a straight face? And she wrote, I say it because I have no idea if they felt pressure or not, nor do you. They easily could have come to the conclusion that those books were offensive. And I wrote, and my retort to that is to reiterate that they had decades, not merely years, but decades to come to those conclusions, and they're only coming to those conclusions now. They very well may have come to those conclusions, but their arrival at those conclusions was fueled by the current madness that we are experiencing collectively with this ludicrous level of political correctness. How can you possibly not see that there is an influence there? And she wrote, acknowledging racism isn't political correctness, it's becoming better humans. And I wrote, there are degrees though. And she wrote, extrapolate please. And I wrote, if you mean expound, extrapolate's the wrong word. If you mean expound, I'd be happy to, but isn't the statement self-explanatory? In fact, beyond self-explanatory, isn't it self-evident? And she wrote, degrees of what? Political correctness or becoming better humans? And I wrote, degrees of just about everything, but I was alluding to degrees of racism. And she wrote, Seuss Enterprises decided these images were overt enough to discontinue. Books go out of print constantly. These weren't big hits. And I wrote, I don't think you're understanding my position here. I'm not wild about their decision, but I'm not outraged about it either. My initial point is, if you scroll to the very top of the subthread, is to simply say that this notion that they completely did it of their own accord without any outside influences, direct or indirect, seems exceptionally implausible given the current state of our socio-political climate. And she wrote, I don't disagree with you, but my argument is that Dr. Seuss was never attacked, as the meme states. And that's when I looked at the meme. And I wrote, you want to know something? Up until right now, I didn't realize that your comment was responding to this particular meme. A childhood friend of mine posted a different meme, which was slightly different in scope, and I thought your comment was in response to that. Now that I realize this meme says Seuss was attacked, and such is not the case. Absolutely, my mistake. I'm laughing at myself a little bit. And she wrote, no worries at all. We had polite discourse. Enjoy your night. And I wrote, we were polite, and I appreciate that. With that said, I'm looking for a shoe to hit myself in the head with at the moment. Suffice it to say, I do keep hearing Homer Simpson's voice exclaiming, don't, in my head over and over again. So there it is. That's me coming to the realization that I made a mistake without actually anybody pointing it out to me. And that's it. There's my presentation. Sorry it took 12 and a half minutes, but that's what it was.